It wasn't a fairy tale, it was a calculated performance hiding in plain sight. And the deeper you look into Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's royal wedding, the more it starts to feel less like love and more like strategy, timing, and something far more unsettling. Because according to Tom Bower, this wasn't destiny unfolding, it was a plan executing. Think about it. A woman who allegedly spent years positioning herself for influence suddenly meets a prince at the exact moment her previous marriage ends. Coincidence? Or precision? And once Harry entered the picture, everything moved fast. Too fast. A shift. A pivot. Almost like a door she had been waiting her whole life to walk through had finally opened. And once she stepped in, there was no turning back.
You're absolutely right. I mean, what I discovered was, of course, that she was hunting for a man in England from 2013 onwards, when her marriage had crashed and she couldn't find anyone in Canada at the time. And she wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And there's no doubt she targeted Harry and found someone who was a childhood friend of his who could introduce them. And then on the days before they met at their blind meeting in a club in London, she researched Harry very carefully.
But here's where the story starts to crack. Meghan publicly claimed she barely knew anything about the royal family before meeting Harry. Innocent, right? Except Bower calls that narrative completely false. He paints a very different picture, one where Meghan wasn't clueless, she was prepared, studying, observing, learning every detail about Harry, his world, his vulnerabilities. Almost like she didn't just meet a prince, she researched him.
She researched Harry very carefully and knew exactly what buttons to press. That he would like Africa, was interested in animals, was interested in philanthropy. She's very tactile, she's very seductive. And she landed him on the first night, even on his own admission. He says, I realized on the first date, she was the one. And of course that's because she's also a great, in that sense, an actress. She knew exactly how to play.
And then suddenly, the circle around Harry begins to shrink. His friends, once loyal, close, almost like brothers, start fading out. Why? According to Bower, Meghan didn't just enter Harry's life, she disrupted it. During that Sandringham shooting weekend, tension reportedly exploded over jokes, comments she labeled unacceptable. But was it really about jokes? Or was it the beginning of a deeper divide? Because once conflict enters a circle, distance follows, and distance isolates.
This particular saga at Sandringham, which obviously was told by someone who was there, was a decisive moment. I mean, it's the moment where effectively she says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch, that she separated him from his hinterland. And of course, he does suffer now enormously.
Then comes Jamaica, another wedding, another moment where insiders claim Meghan's behavior raised eyebrows, complaints about food, service, attitude, small details, right? Except patterns are built on small details. And when multiple moments start pointing in the same direction, they stop being accidents. They start becoming signals. Signals that Harry's world was quietly being reshaped piece by piece.
And the same then happened when they went to Tommy Inskip's wedding in Jamaica, which was a great friend of Harry's, who in the end was banned from the dinner after their wedding.
Yeah, well, I know at least 3 of the very good friends were apparently
banned, all by Meghan.
And then they saw all these celebrities filing in.
Exactly.
Who'd known her about 3 minutes.
Yeah, if that.
And just as those relationships strained, something even messier unfolded. Her own family, a father staging paparazzi photos, a sudden health crisis, a royal wedding overshadowed by chaos, no siblings present, only her mother attending. It wasn't just awkward, it was explosive. Public embarrassment wrapped in silence.
No, why did Harry never go to meet Thomas?
Why is that?
Well, I think because Meghan didn't want him to meet a fat old man. I mean, Meghan was very worried. That's why she brought her mother across the wedding just 2 days before the ceremony.
What do we know about her mum? Her mum's a mysterious figure.
Very mysterious. The book tells it all. I mean, the mother really was a very odd woman, disappeared for 10 years, effectively, during her childhood. That's why Thomas had to bring her up. And in the end, what Thomas says is that it was Doria who really engineered the split between himself and Meghan, because she wanted the fame and the glory.
Now here's where it gets even more uncomfortable, because King Charles III reportedly stepped in. He suggested she fly to the US, fix things, stop the damage before it consumed the wedding narrative. A simple request, a royal attempt at damage control. But Meghan refused. Security, privacy, reasons that sounded logical but left senior royals unsettled. Because in a family built on image, unity, and optics, this wasn't just a refusal. It was a statement. And then comes the most emotional and perhaps most controversial layer of all, the comparisons to Princess Diana. Harry, driven by memory and grief, reportedly saw echoes of his mother in Meghan. But critics and Bauer argue this wasn't a tribute, it was a narrative being constructed, a powerful one. Emotional, symbolic, but dangerous, because Diana wasn't just loved, she earned that love over years of service, empathy, sacrifice. So when Meghan was placed into that same narrative so quickly, it didn't inspire admiration, it triggered resistance, questions, doubts. And behind palace doors, those doubts turned into friction. Because while the world saw a glowing bride preparing for a historic wedding, insiders saw something else entirely, a perfectionist clashing with centuries-old tradition. Staff reportedly overwhelmed, constant changes, endless demands, a system built on order suddenly dealing with unpredictability. Even Catherine, Princess of Wales, known for her calm and diplomacy, was pulled into quiet tension over bridesmaid dress disagreements. Not loud fights, but subtle fractures, the kind that don't make headlines but change dynamics forever. And here's the unsettling part. Every single moment, every decision, every public appearance, it all starts to look less spontaneous and more controlled, curated, like a narrative being written in real time. Bauer suggests Meghan wasn't just entering the royal family, she was shaping how the world would see her inside it, controlling the image, the story, the perception. Because in a world where perception is power, whoever controls the story controls everything. And if that's true, then the royal wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a launch, a turning point, the beginning of something much bigger than anyone realized at the time. But the real question is, if this was all part of a plan, what was the end game? And if you thought the story stopped at control, tension, and carefully crafted perception, then this is where it spirals into something far more unsettling. Because according to Tom Bauer, ambition wasn't just a background trait in Meghan Markle's journey, it was the engine driving everything. Not ordinary ambition, not the kind that quietly hopes for success, but something sharper, hungrier. A vision that didn't just include being part of the royal family, but rising above it. And suddenly, the narrative shifts again. Because if the goal was never just love, then what exactly was this marriage building toward? Bauer claims Meghan didn't see herself as someone content with being fifth in line beside Prince Harry. No. The comparison that kept quietly lingering in the background was always Catherine, Princess of Wales, the woman who had everything, status, admiration, the future crown orbiting her life. And in that comparison, something starts to feel off. Because this wasn't just admiration, it looked like rivalry, a silent, unspoken tension where one woman had everything the other allegedly wanted. And when ambition meets limitation, it doesn't settle, it adapts. So what happens when becoming queen isn't possible? According to Bauer's perspective, you create a second path, a backup plan hiding in plain sight. And suddenly, the guest list at that royal wedding starts looking very different. Hollywood elites, power players, celebrities who had little to no connection to Harry's life, but every connection to influence, money, and global visibility. At the time, it felt glamorous. Now, it feels strategic, like seeds being planted long before anyone realized what they would grow into. Because years later, when Netflix deals, media ventures, and brand power emerged, those same connections didn't look random anymore. They looked premeditated. And that's where the most explosive claim begins to take shape. That the royal wedding, the spectacle watched by millions, wasn't just a union. It was a launchpad, a perfectly timed entry into a level of fame that even Hollywood struggles to reach. And in that light, Harry himself starts to look less like a partner and more like the gateway, the access point, the key that unlocked the world Meghan had been moving toward for years. It's uncomfortable to even think about, but once the pattern is seen, it's hard to unsee. Because look at the pattern Bauer keeps pointing toward. A first marriage that ended when it no longer aligned with future ambitions. A father distanced when he became a public liability. Friends left behind when they no longer fit the narrative. These aren't random emotional fallouts, they're decisions. Calculated, strategic, almost surgical. And if that pattern is real, then it leads to one chilling question. What happens when Harry himself no longer fits the plan? Bauer doesn't hesitate to go there. He suggests that loyalty in this version of the story isn't emotional, It's functional, tied to usefulness, value, opportunity. And if someone with more power, more influence, more access were to appear, would the story change again? Would the same pattern repeat? It sounds extreme, harsh, almost unbelievable. But then again, so did everything else until you started connecting the dots. And while all of this unfolds beneath the surface, Harry's transformation becomes impossible to ignore. This wasn't the same prince the world once knew. The soldier, the brother, the royal who carried both rebellion and duty in equal measure. Suddenly, he's stepping away from his country, his titles, his family, cutting ties, drawing lines, defending Meghan at every turn, sometimes against his own blood. And in the middle of wedding preparations, one moment reportedly captures this shift perfectly. The tiara dispute. Meghan allegedly rejecting the option given to her. Protocol clashing with preference. And Harry's response echoing through palace halls, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. A sentence that to some sounded romantic, but to others, it sounded like something had changed. Something fundamental. Because in a system where tradition outweighs personal desire, that kind of statement isn't just bold, it's disruptive. It doesn't bend the rules. It challenges them. And for the royal family, built on centuries of quiet discipline and controlled image, disruption isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. And so the wedding finally happens. The spectacle, the dress, the smiles, the global applause. A perfect moment frozen in time. But behind that perfection, all these fractures, tensions, patterns, they don't disappear. They wait, quietly, patiently. Because the real story doesn't end at the altar, it begins there. Because once the cameras turn off, once the world moves on, those same questions start echoing louder. Was this love story ever what it seemed? Or was it something far more complex, far more calculated? A convergence of ambition, opportunity, and timing wrapped in the illusion of a fairy tale. And the most unsettling part? We still don't have all the answers. Because every time a new detail surfaces, every time another layer is peeled back, it doesn't clarify the story, it deepens the mystery. It adds another piece to a puzzle that refuses to fully come together. So now you're left with this lingering tension, this uneasy feeling that what we witnessed wasn't just a wedding, but the beginning of a carefully orchestrated transformation, one that is still unfolding, one that may not be finished yet. And if that's true, then the biggest revelation hasn't even happened. It's still coming.